I'm Marie Goy in Singapore. The headlines. Nikolas Cruz, the 19-year-old accused of killing 17 people at his former Florida high school, appears in court. South Africa's new president, Cyril Ramaphosa, vows to fight corruption after being sworn in.
Hello, I'm Ben Bland in London, also in the programme. On the menu, we take a look at some of the local dishes being enjoyed at the Winter Olympics. And Xin Yan Kuai Le, Happy Lunar New Year. Chinese people around the world celebrate the Spring Festival.
Live from our studios in Singapore and London. This is BBC World News. It's Newsday.
Good morning. It's 9 a.m. here in Singapore, 1 a.m. in London, and 8 p.m. in Parkland, Florida, where a vigil is taking place to remember the 17 people killed by a teenager yesterday. Earlier in the day, President Trump promised action to make American schools safer, and Nikolas Cruz, a former student at the school, appeared in court. The FBI said it had been warned a year ago about the potential threat posed by Cruz, but that there was no evidence he was planning an attack. Ali Makbul reports.
Gary, does he know where the shooter is?
For hours, children at a high school found themselves in a combat zone.
17 Julia 5, I have the gunshot victim.
There was mayhem and bloodshed as a gunman stalked its corridors. Shots can be heard close by as these terrified pupils sit in their classroom, fearing for their own lives.
He went up and down the hallway, just banging and shooting into the classrooms. He shot through my door and broke the window.
And then all of a sudden we hear one of our student government teachers say, "Run as fast as you can," and we hear a gunshot.
17-year-old Lewis Misen, originally from Coventry, moved to Florida 3 years ago and is a student at the school. He was barricaded in a storage cupboard for 2 hours during the shooting.
We heard the door to our room being locked, and we heard somebody say, "Police, police." And there were two different people, but we didn't know how many shooters there were. We didn't know if it was police. And I remember our teacher turning to me and a few other kids, and she goes, "What do we do?" And that's terrifying. And so she opened the door, and the relief when you realise it's these guys in military get-up holding pistols and assault rifles. I have friends who've been killed, I have friends who've been shot. How can this be real? This is school I go to. I'm watching video footage and it's my friends coming out with their hands up.
Police did finally get to every classroom, the fear palpable. Survivors were ushered through the corridors with hands on their heads, police marksmen watching closely in case a gunman was still among them. The first of those identified as having been killed was Aaron Feiss, a football coach and security guard at the school. In the coming days, we'll learn the tales of the young victims too. Well, this is one of many vigils being held for those who died, and shocking here to see the faces of so many young people who yesterday were attending what they thought was a regular day at school, and today are mourning friends who sat beside them in their classrooms. The killer escaped with fleeing school children, but was soon arrested without a struggle. He's 19-year-old Nikolas Cruz, a young man known for having a fascination with guns, and who even, it now appears, threatened in a social media post to become what he called a professional school shooter.
Are you Nikolas Jacob Cruz?
Yes, ma'am.
A leader of a white nationalist militia says Cruz had taken part in paramilitary training with them.
Something very important to tell you. You're charged with some very serious crimes.
Kevin Trejos found the girl who'd sat next to him in an English class earlier in the day was one of those who died. He also knew the gunman, who'd been a former student at the very same school he attacked.
He's someone who used racial slurs, who was just awful to other people, and I'm sure he was bullied himself by some, but he was the type of person where people were scared to bully him because they knew something could happen. They just didn't think this would happen. It makes me angry because, you know, we all knew him, we all knew that there was a potential for something to go wrong. It just sucks that we couldn't stop him. Like,
these thoughts are the type with which no children should have to burden themselves. But in a country where there have been more than 200 school shootings in less than 5 years, more and more are being touched by such horrors. Ali Maqbool, BBC News in Parkland, Florida.
Well, let's take a look now at some of the other news today. The leader of the African National Congress, Cyril Ramaphosa, has been sworn in as South Africa's new president. Jacob Zuma resigned from the post after pressure from his party over various corruption allegations. Here's the moment that Mr. Ramaphosa took the oath of office.
Would you please raise your right hand, Mr. President-elect, and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
I confirm that we have both sealed the oath by signing, and it's my honor and privilege to congratulate the President of the Republic of South Africa. Congratulations.
Some other stories making the news today. President Trump's former chief advisor, Steve Bannon, has refused to answer a range of questions posed by a congressional committee. He was being interviewed by the House Intelligence Committee, which is investigating alleged Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election. The committee is reportedly considering holding him in contempt. The Hong Kong pop star Denise Ho says she's been denied a performance permit in Malaysia because of her support for gay rights. She is openly gay and very outspoken on LGBT issues. She had been scheduled to perform in Kuala Lumpur in April. A Malaysian government minister said that performances had to comply with local values. The former Oxfam worker accused of paying for prostitutes while working in Chad and Haiti has responded in the Times newspaper. Roland van Hauvermeiren denied paying for sex and said that an event he attended in Haiti was not, as alleged, a sex party. Jennifer Aniston and her husband Justin Theroux have announced they are separating after less than 3 years of marriage. The 49-year-old star of the American sitcom Friends and 46-year-old Leftovers actor said in a joint statement that the decision was mutual and lovingly made at the end of last year. Now, a question for you. How careful are you with your belongings when you go through security at an airport or train station? Well, however careful you are, probably not as vigilant as this woman. She climbed into the X-ray machine during a security check for fear of being separated from her handbag, much to the surprise of security staff. She emerged, apparently unscathed, from the experience and then left the area immediately afterwards, as you do.
It's the beginning of what could well be the biggest annual celebration worldwide, the Lunar New Year, also known as the Spring Festival. More than 1.4 billion Chinese people around the world mark the official entry into the Year of the Dog with lanterns, banquets and colourful celebrations. The BBC's Tim Ullman has more.
In China, this is how most of the country sees in the Lunar New Year. State television's Spring Festival Gala. By some estimates, the most watched entertainment programme on Earth. Around 700 million viewers for a 4-hour spectacular of colour and sound. Low-key and subtle it is not, but this has become a New Year tradition. Some decided to celebrate in their own way, with fireworks and sparklers in Beijing. The sound of firecrackers, young and old, enjoying the noise and the spectacle.
I hope this Year of the Dog, the children keep growing up in good health and our elders keep well. And I'll also send our New Year wishes to everyone.
Away from the fireworks, there's food. Entire families gathering together to make and consume dumplings and noodles, a tasty way to welcome the Year of the Dog. At this Buddhist temple in Shanghai, people prayed for good fortune. They burned incense, looking forward to new opportunities. And it isn't just China celebrating. This, a sea of red lanterns in Kuala Lumpur. Plenty of dogs were present, some symbolic, some real. Hundreds of millions of people coming together to say goodbye to the old and hello to the new. Tim Allman, BBC News.
Well, earlier I spoke to feng shui master Chi Han Chua, and I started by asking him for his predictions for the year of the Earth Dog.
This year will be a good year because it's a double Earth year element. So actually there are 5 elements theory in the Chinese metaphysics, and this is the year for the Earth Dog this year. Yeah.
So you brought us a little yellow dog, and
yeah, that's right, because the color for the element of Earth is yellow, so a yellow doggy for the year.
And of course the mandarins are for the celebrations across
yes,
the region.
To wish all our viewers a happy Lunar New Year. Yep.
I think a lot of us want to know who's going to have a good year and a bad year in this year of the dog. Any predictions from you?
Well, depending on which side of the field you are, Mr. Trump, Donald Trump, President of the United States, is going to have a good year going by his birth chart. So might be good news or bad news depending on, yeah.
So despite, of course, we just had some tragic incident in Florida, and we have a lot of issues surrounding the administration, but you predict a really good year.
It's on the surface, everything will look kind of calm because the element of Earth portends to like faith, loyalty, and trust. And so on the surface, everything looks cool and calm. But at the same time, this year's pairing of Wu Shi, which is a double Earth year, is also known as the tempest or a wild southern wind. So you know, on the surface, everything might look good, but do be careful for sudden outbursts.
Okay, interesting, because you mentioned calm, but we had a lot of scandals and revelation, especially surrounding the Me Too movement in 2017. Do you think we can expect more of those revelations this year?
Oh yes, the element of Earth represents, in Chinese it's called Wu, but at the same time it represents the older man, right? So it probably might just be a salacious year, so we'll see a continuation of all these Me Too and all that for the year.
For our viewers who want to do something to make sure that they have a good year, is there any advice that you have for the Year of the Dog?
Yeah, so for Chinese New Year, it's always a good idea to wear red, because red is the color of celebration.
Well, I'm wearing, and Ben is wearing red tie as well.
And a little bit of red on my tie.
So red is the only color. Is there any other? I mean, a yellow dog, is yellow a good year?
Well, if you want to dress according to the color of the year, the element of the year, then that would be yellow, right? Shades of Earth also. Yeah.
You're watching Newsday on the BBC. Still to come on the program. All that exercise must work up an appetite. We take a look at the food on offer at the Winter Olympic Games. Welcome back to Newsday on the BBC. I'm Marie Goy in Singapore.
Hello, I'm Ben Bland in London. Our top stories. More details emerge about the suspected teenage gunman who attacked his former high school in the US, reigniting the long-running debate about gun laws in America.
Cyril Ramaphosa has replaced Jacob Zuma as the president of South Africa, taking over a country with a struggling economy and a divided ruling party. Mr. Ramaphosa vowed that fighting corruption would be his top priority. Well, let's take a look at some front pages from around the world, and we start with the Japan Times, which reports on the fallout from a recent hacking of the cryptocurrency exchange called Coincheck, worth about $500 million. Well, traders in the digital money have filed a lawsuit in Tokyo against the company for reimbursement of their money plus interest, and their lawyers say about 1,000 more people want to do the same. Meanwhile, Gulf News has a story about a possible distraction for drivers in the United Arab Emirates. A roadside gallery. Motorists driving from Dubai to Abu Dhabi will be able to see 10 billboards with pictures of artworks at the Waterloo, Abu Dhabi, and tune into a radio channel to hear 30-second lesson on each piece. And finally, the Financial Times has a look at stricter rules in London planned for driver hours that could hit ride-hailing apps like Uber. London's Transport Authority says all private car companies will be compelled to hand over data on drivers' working hours in a move that the paper says is seen specifically aimed at Uber. And then, of course, the shooting in Florida, unsurprisingly, sparking a lot of discussions online.
Yeah, indeed, Mariko, so much so that it's trending right now. The shooting in Florida getting a lot of attention, a lot of it calling out American politicians. Screenwriter Beth Kalb, who writes for Jimmy Kimmel Live, has been singling out senators who are tweeting their condolences. She's responding with the amount of money they have received from the National Rifle Association. For example, when Florida's Senator Marco Rubio tweeted that today is that terrible day that you pray never comes, Ms. Kalb replied with a figure of just over $3 million. And actually, let's stay with that story, because while the shooting has rekindled calls for gun control in the US, President Trump has been trying to put the focus on mental health. A little earlier, I spoke to Lisa Gold, who's a clinical professor of psychology at Georgetown University, also an editor of a book called Gun Violence and Mental Illness. Here's what she told me about this particular line of thought.
Really, it's a very unhelpful and unproductive line to follow. It increases the stigma associated with mental illness. Anything that increases stigma decreases the likelihood that people who need help will come forward. And even if you did give everybody who needed all the help they wanted or could take, it wouldn't make a dent in the kind of gun violence that we're seeing and that gets so much publicity.
So if a lack of attention to helping people with mental health problems is part of the problem, what can be done to help?
Well, it's really a public health problem. Both mental health and firearm violence in the United States are both public health problems, and they need to both be addressed as public health problems. Mass shootings get the most public attention but are actually the least common form of gun violence in the United States. 2/3 of the gun violence in the United States is actually firearm suicide, and the other third are homicides that are not typically related to people with mental illness. Mass shootings account for less than 1% a year, which is not to say that they're not horrible and tragic, but to try to focus on preventing mass shootings by looking at those who are mentally ill, most mass shootings are not committed by people with mental illness. There isn't even that commonality. So as evidenced by the fact that we're just repeating the same script over and over and over again, focusing on mental illness each time, which is the knee-jerk reaction, is not effective.
Lisa, of course, there's the focus on the mental health of the perpetrator, but then, of course, there has to be a focus on the mental health of those who have been through all of this, because they will have seen some horrific things. I just wonder what the best way to help them recover, although, you know, in some cases it may take months and years for that.
Well, you know, each person has to be offered the opportunity to sort of do a very immediate and acute trauma debriefing, so to speak, and to not try to avoid the very natural inclination to try to avoid or ignore feelings or to go on as if things are okay or to appear to be okay. And that's really the best way to avoid longer-term issues, although it's inevitable that with this kind of trauma, some people, not everyone, but some people will have longer-term issues. Some people will be more vulnerable. Some people will be more resilient.
Now, Korea is known for its food, and with the Winter Olympics taking place there, the food is in the spotlight. Our correspondent Stephen McDonald checked out some of the local dishes available around the Olympic Village in Pyeongchang.
The athletes, coaches and spectators visiting here for the Winter Olympics will no doubt be keen to try out some Korean barbecue. And the area where the games are being held is known for a particular type of beef, making the barbecue experience in this region a special one. But for many, the striking cuisine in these mountains is actually to be found pegged up outside. When you walk around Pyeongchang, you can't help but notice all of this dried fish hanging up beside the river. Now, overnight, it's dropping down to -20 degrees Celsius. It's absolutely freezing. Why would you hang out this fish in such harsh conditions? Well, apparently this is crucial to the process which delivers such a unique flavour.
The reason why we hang it in the winter is because we need to repeat the process of freezing and thawing. We hang them to dry from December to April, around 120 days.
Locals buy this fish by the bag full to take home, and you can get it at restaurants. What's more, the good news for athletes going into celebration overdrive after their events is that the fish is also used to make a famous hangover cure soup. 잘 먹겠습니다. Bon appetit. Pretty good.
Doesn't that make you hungry? And staying with Korean food, over in the north, a competition other than the Olympics drew attention. This is the 8th national cooking competition to honor the birth anniversary of late leader Kim Jong-il. The video provided by the North Korean news agency shows cooks preparing traditional dishes with fish and meat. The contest is said to have drawn over 300 cooks.
Well, let's stay with the food theme because it has, of course, a big place in the Lunar New Year as Chinese communities around the world celebrate the arrival of the Year of the Dog. One Lunar New Year tradition for families and friends is Lucky Lo Hei. This is when you mix a messy fish salad for good luck. First, you assemble the ingredients like shredded vegetables, lime, peanuts and fish, saying auspicious things like, may you have a sweet life. Then, as you can see, with family and friends, you just toss it all up. So, Mariko, big plans for your Lunar New Year?
Well, I was just talking to our colleagues here whether we're doing the office Lo Hei, which we usually do each year. I hope I didn't miss it yesterday because I went home early. But I just want to emphasize, though, because I saw some online reaction to that report of Lo Hei, that it's a waste of food. So I want to reassure all of you that we finished the salad. But later today, if I can stay awake, I'll probably go over to a colleague's house to celebrate the new year. And I'll bring my children so that they can collect ang pao with a lot of money in it. Well, moving on from the food to animals, keeping wild animals in private property is illegal in India, but a social activist has built a private zoo for almost 100 animals. It's been operating as a rescue center for newborns whose mothers were killed by local hunters. Let's take a look.
फक्त आई त्यांच्या गरजा पुरवू करते. आई सगळं शिकवतो. शिकार कशी करायची, स्वतःला कसं वाचवायचं किंवा काय खायचं आणि काय नाही खायचं. म्हणजे पण हे जे लहान पिल्लू आहेत की ज्यांनी आई बघितलीच नाही कारण डोळे बंद होते, तर यांना अनाथालयाची गरज होती आणि आपण ते करुणेतून सुरू केलं. समज आहे की बिबट्या क्रूर आहे, तरच अत्यंत क्रूर आहे, असं एक समज आहे आपल्याकडे. आज 44 वर्ष मला झाली इथे. प्रेम केलं तर किती प्रेम करतात ते आपण या उदाहरणावरून तुम्हाला दिसते की मी सुद्धा जिवंत आहे. प्रेमाची भाषा किती स्ट्रॉंग असते. अल्टिमेटली मी माझ्या आयुष्य माझं आता उताराला लागलेलं आहे, पण हे जे अनुभव आहे वन्य प्राण्यांनी दिलेलं प्रेम, तर हे खूप असं एका जन्मामध्ये हे सगळं अनुभवणं मी स्वतःला भाग्यवान समजतो खरं.
You've been watching Newsday on the BBC. I'm Marie Coy in Singapore.
That just leaves me to say Xinye Huai'e and leave you with these pictures. This group of baby pandas in China's Sichuan province enjoying their Lunar New Year gift. The cubs are members of the newborn family at a breeding base in the province, which saw 42 panda cubs born last year.